as we're starting to do this practice, it's good to really notice what's going on in our body, in our mind. And as we start just to acknowledge, I'd like to acknowledge that we're here on the Mi'kmaq territory, the unceded and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And the topic today is connection during COVID. So it's about the disconnection, and in particular, some of the inquiry will be around if we know somebody, or even if we don't have someone in our personal life that has the belief that COVID is a hoax, that we're looking into some of the separation that happens around that. As we were children, we traded authenticity for attachment in order to survive. So Gabor Mate is such a wonderful resource around trauma and our nervous systems and how this actually works. When we're a child, we can't afford to go too far against our parents, to go too far against our peer group either at school, or we're going to be bullied at school, perhaps at home. We need to try to maintain a safe, a secure attachment with our parents or other caregivers so that we can survive childhood, because literally we won't survive on our own. We don't know how to cook. We can't get a job if we're 5 years old and bring home food. And so we really need to have reliable caregiving from parents. And of course, many people don't have that. And many people who had some kind of neglect or not being seen or some kind of not secure attachment, we have these long standing patterns. Of course, we bring all of our patterns from childhood into adulthood. But some of those patterns are really troubling right now. So if we were trading authenticity for attachment, we weren't really sharing who we are. A lot of the way that we might describe that is that we go into compliance. We don't rock the boat. We don't risk saying this is what we feel or this is what we believe, because it's more important for our survival to be attached than it is to be true to ourselves. And so that's one of the individuation practices and developmental stages that we go through lots of times in our teen years. But we continue to have to do that in our adult life as well. So, right now, in the time of COVID, and if we're specifically talking about whether or not people are vaccinated, or if they're not vaccinated, what is the reason for that? Are they still being careful? Are they being risky? And we take our own health into our hands when we're making decisions that might not be the best for us. That's what we're going to look at today. So, obviously, what we believe depends on who we trust. So, if we have a lot of experience with being lied to by big pharma and government, which I think a lot of people have at least some apprehension about that, and some pretty solid evidence at times too that big pharma and government are not here to help us. So that creates this atmosphere of mistrust. It might be that our partner or someone in our friend group or someone else in the family is really strongly believing that COVID is a hoax and that we don't need to be falling for that. And so it can be really difficult to reconcile those two things. So we have a lot of emotions around that, and that's part of what we're going to work with today. But we also can feel disappointed or betrayed when people have these kinds of opinions that we feel are not true. So I don't want to reduce this at all to a we should, they should, or to reduce the complexity of this. So someone who does not choose to be vaccinated is not necessarily believing that COVID is a hoax. Oftentimes that's not the case. And sometimes it is. There's a large group of people who kind of fall into that category of believing it's a hoax. And we're polarized. So on the one hand, people who are choosing not to be vaccinated might be worried about the safety of the vaccine. I know people in my family who just said, I don't know how that's gonna work. I have autoimmune disease, or I have this, or I don't know that I trust that it's been thoroughly tested. Or so a lot of times people are worried about the safety. people who are choosing or who are not able to get vaccinated are hearing a lot of anger now from people who are vaccinated. It's like, you've kept us at home because of COVID. You're responsible for the lockdowns, which clearly isn't true. There wasn't even a vaccine several months ago. But it's just like we're kind of turning on each other. So we're hearing things like, you stay home this time. And I've seen a lot on social media about that kind of thing. But also on a personal level, some people are losing their jobs or at risk of losing their jobs. And they can't now go in a lot of places with the vaccine mandates. They can't go into restaurants or bars or gyms or a lot of places now without proof of vaccine. And then there's the whole, the judgment and shaming that we do. So we make assumptions as a group. It's not a real good quality of human beings, that's for sure. But we tend to put people in groups, in large groups, and make assumptions about them. So we might assume that someone who believes that COVID is a hoax is brainwashed and stupid. And they might assume the same, is that if we believe that the vaccine is a good idea, that we're brainwashed. And so we have this larger societal issue. On the other side, there's that communal responsibility that we have to each other that doesn't seem to be on a lot of people's radar. It's like, well, I don't really care, or it feels like they don't care. That's certainly not true for everyone. There's a feeling of they don't care that, if I need cancer treatment, it's going to be delayed because the ICUs are flooded with non vaccinated COVID people. So there's a lot of anger, and it's our duty to be vaccinated. We need to keep each other safe. We need to pull together. And then there's the assumptions. I know they're in a fight response. We make assumptions about people who believe COVID is a hoax. They're stupid, they're brainwashed. And I hate being told that I'm the sheeple. I hate being told I've drank the Kool-Aid. And also, on a larger society level, but certainly on a personal level, we might really love this person. And the protection that we need to create around ourselves might be from COVID, but it also might be from their anger, their judgment, them telling us that we're brainwashed and stupid for having the vaccine. It also might be that they have a very genuine fear for our safety as well. So there's a lot of complications. And what I've, got on this slide here is extreme. It's kind of both ends of the spectrum. And so there's a lot in between in the middle, of course, too. So I wanted to pause here a little bit. So if we're looking at conspiracy theories, there's been a lot written about that. There's been a conspiracy theory 2,000 years ago, all the way through history, every time there's some kind of a big event. So there's been a lot of research in psychology and sociology and a lot of insight into why people believe conspiracy theories. The one is that there's a false sense of entitlement. And we really hate not knowing what happened. And because we feel like if I don't know what happened, then I don't know how to protect myself. And so that feeling of I'm powerless, it's one of the things that people who are vaccinated or who are wearing masks and who are taking those real precautions, they're being careful about the crowds that they're in. There is a feeling that I can actually affect what's happening here. But that feeling of I don't want to feel powerless. So if I get involved in some kind of a group, we have a scapegoat like rich people or like Bill Gates, people like that. We don't have to deal with the fear as much because we have that sense of inclusion. We have a common enemy. And it's a primitive brain response. A lot of people are in a fight response. We're angry at each other, at these large groups of people. We're angry that COVID came along and so dramatically changed our lives. Some people in this group as well have had COVID. Some people have lost people to COVID. And there's a real range of experiences that we have. So these nervous system responses really are incited by false statements and political polarization by leaders. So if we look at the difference in the United States between the Trump administration and the Biden administration, where Trump was calling it the China virus and was inciting hatred towards people from Asia. He was saying it's not such a big deal, and nobody around him was wearing masks. And so there was a lot of things that were happening early in the pandemic that, in my view, were made worse by the way that that was rolling out. So then we also have this, this knowing that we can't fully trust big pharma. They're out to make money. And there's a lot of lobbying and corruption in government as well. And we all know that. The specifics around this are, how do I apply knowing that to this specific incident? Is the COVID vaccine safe? And is it a hoax? Is it real? And how can we kind of work with that? So, if you think about the history of experiments on people of color, Black women were sterilized without their permission on the 1700s. So that's 300 some years ago. Smallpox infected blankets were given to Indigenous people as part of a plan to eliminate them. So there's a lot of truth to this corruption. People in power don't necessarily have our goodwill or our health or our lives at heart. So we take this truth that's here and then we apply it in this kind of widespread way that may or may not be applicable to the situation. So I did a certain amount of research into Jennifer Doudna and the whole splicing of the mRNA vaccines and just looked into it a little bit. And I know many people were trying to do kind of research around this. And I'm always interested in why people are the way they are and what is the nervous system response? Why does that come up the way it does? And how does that impact us? So those are some of the factors of why people might believe that COVID is a hoax or that vaccines are not something that we should do. And then there's also a lot of nuance to this. So I don't want to get into a kind of you're right, I'm wrong, vice versa. We're trying not to get into that polarization ourselves. So let's stop now and do this inquiry. And for me, I have someone I know very well who believes that COVID is a hoax. And they've been very angry and accusatory, not to me specifically, because I don't live near them anymore, but to family members. And so it feels like there's a big disruption that needs repair in the relationship. Notice what your response is. So get comfortable if you want. You can, like I said, you can take notes as you're going through this, kind of jotting things down, or just kind of sit back. But notice now what's going on in your body. This is a somatic mindfulness-based inquiry. So somatic meaning in the body. So we're really interested in, what does it feel like in my body as I'm looking at these things? Notice where you're tight, where you've got tension in your body. Notice if your breathing got kind of shallow or restricted. And notice what thoughts are coming in. So for me, I might have a mental picture of the person who accused another family member of drinking the Kool-Aid and being a sheeple and being very contemptuous. There's a certain tone of voice that goes along with that. And if you don't have that in your immediate family or friend circle, I'm sure you know people who are like that, or we certainly see it on the media as well. So just to bring that forward. If you're finding that anything is a little too intense, you can do some tapping, just 2 fingers on your forehead if you want, and take your attention away from the image or the words, away from the thoughts, and just into the sound of the tapping and the sensation of the tapping. Take some deeper breaths. Keep your eyes open and put the image on the wall on the other side of the room. Put it in a frame. So what we're doing there is we're reminding our nervous system that right now there's nobody here yelling at us. There's nobody here at all. We're doing an inquiry. We're just looking and see what is it that's coming up around this. So what are some of the emotions? And I will drop these in. I'll just say the sentences and then pause in between, or you can read the sentences. We'll take several minutes with this part of the inquiry. What are the emotions? I'm angry. I feel betrayed. I'm disappointed that they believe what they do. And notice if you feel that somewhere in your body, if it affected your breath. When you think about, I don't like being called a sheeple, it feels so disrespectful. I'm angry. I feel like I have to protect myself from their anger. I feel betrayed. And notice how true or not true that feels. On an individual scale or a wider scale, a large percentage of people believe this and they're acting in a different way than what we might think is safe. And if you're feeling something in your body, notice where it is. If you're feeling angry, it's often there's that heat to anger, sometimes that a cold, implacable, longer term anger. What does it feel like in your body? Is it fiery? Is it in a certain location? So stay really present in your body as you're looking at this. I'm angry. I feel betrayed. And stay in tune with your breath, with your feet, your seat. You could hold your own hands if you want. Notice any kind of judgments that come up. Are you mentally condemning them? And stay in tune with your breath. And notice that anger, when we feel it directly, often shifts and changes. And like any of these inquiries, we're kind of dipping our toe into the inquiry. And then we might step back and come back to it later, just to notice what was your experience during that couple of minutes of tapping into anger, betrayal, disappointment. And kind of clear the air. If you want to go on to the next one now, if you don't, you could stay with what you're doing, of course. I'm scared to be around this person who believes COVID is a hoax. They're not wearing masks, they're not vaccinated. I'm scared I'm going to get COVID if I'm around them. And maybe I'm scared that they're going to yell at me, be contemptuous. There's been a big breach. And I love them and want to be with them. We have these very complicated, nuanced relationships, especially if there's a personal relationship here. So, on the one hand, we might go along with a stereotype of people who believe that COVID is a hoax. But when we know the person and we care about them, what I remember and what I know is that this person is a very good man. He's a good person. And something has shifted, and this is what's going on now. That's not the whole of the person, and it's not the whole of my relationship with the person. So, to let that in, we can be scared of the heightened risk. We can be not wanting to put ourselves in the way of somebody's anger or contempt, and we can still love them. And notice what now is there, what's here in your heart. And it might be a broader context of I don't like it that there's so many people that feel so differently. I feel so isolated and separate from them. I really want this to change, and I want to feel like we're all in this together. So if it's someone we care about or the larger group of people who believe COVID is a hoax, I want them to see that it's not a hoax. I want them to let that in, to come away from that conspiracy theory. I want them to believe what I believe. I want us to not be at odds about this. So feel that too. Maybe it's frustration, could be all kinds of different emotions there. What does that feel like in the body to really want someone else to change? And notice the energy of that. Notice, is it in your arms and legs? Is it in your core? Are you clenching your teeth, shoulders, your gut? I really want them to change. And I really want to feel like we're in sync, that we have this common base for connection. I don't feel that right now. So lots of deep breaths as you're doing this. Stay aware of your body. We're not blocking anything, we're just looking. You keep your eyes open. This is how I feel right now in my body. These are the thoughts I have. I'm really having trouble accepting that this is the one, this is the reality of it. I don't want it to be like this. And if they would change, then it wouldn't be like this. If you're working with thoughts, you could put them up like they're written out on a page and put them up into a frame. If it's an image, the same. And take your eyes around the empty space around the outside of the frame. Go around that empty space a couple of times in each direction. And then let that kind of move to the background, that part of the inquiry now. The reverse inquiry in the Kilby inquiry is where we state something that's not true in order to elicit the resistance to that, or what it is that's holding us back from letting that be true. So, again, whether you're working with this large group of people who believe that COVID is a hoax, they're anti mask, anti vax, and anywhere in along that continuum. So people who are much more reasonable about it, of course, where it's easier to feel connection with. We can understand someone who's vaccine hesitant or who doesn't believe generally in vaccines and keep them in our heart more easily than someone who's angry and it's a war and we have to stop this. And so part of this is what's happening in the other person's nervous system affects what happens in ours. So the reverse inquiry, and you can change the words, of course. So let all of that kind of settle for a moment, come back into your body. You can put your hand on your heart or both if you want. I accept and keep them in my heart just as they are. And notice your response, whether it's physical, energetic. If there's a resistance to that, it'll probably come in words as well. What is it that is holding you back from a full, wholehearted love and acceptance for them without them changing at all, just as they are? I accept and keep them in my heart just as they are. And if that's not completely true, what is it that's in the way? Continue to notice what's happening in your system. What is the rebuttal or the resistance? What is holding you back from this complete acceptance? And notice as well if there's any shaming that you're doing to yourself. Well, I should be able to do that. So that's not really what we're doing here. We're really just kind of open hearted inquiry. We all resist. We all want things to be the way that we want them to be, especially when it's high stakes like this. And then let the words fall away a little bit as well and just kind of tune into that in your heart without quite so many thoughts about it. Come down into your body, notice what that feels like. The question that we're working with is, can we still connect? And we're all tired, grieving. Many people are not behaving well. When we're in a fight, flight, or freeze response, we don't have good access to our higher level brain. So we don't have access to thinking things through, to emotional regulation. We need to come back into a more emotionally regulated state for that to be something we have access to again. So we see that with ourselves and with many other people. People are tired and grieving and in a fight response, and that makes it really hard. And we have really strong beliefs. We really want the other side, so to speak, to see the truth. We're angry, we're scared. This is not a good atmosphere for connection. So, the last couple of minutes, let's look at our connection that we have with this person, or more generically, this group of people who are on the other side, so to speak. And feel into your willingness to cultivate an open heart, even with a very firm belief that they're wrong and that they need to change. See if you could let that belief go. Just kind of be there. We're not trying to change the belief. But could you cultivate that willingness to stay open in your heart to them? One of the ways that we might do that is to think about other times that we've spent with them. If this is a close person to us, there's a lot of reasons why they're close to us. Sometimes it's family, but even then, we might have a fondness for them. We might have shared memories of childhood or different times. And even if we don't have that personal, an individual who's personally important to us, we can know that everybody in this circumstance is sharing tired, grieving, and fight response. Everybody wants to be safe. Nobody wants to lose someone that they love. We have that in common with everyone. We might not have a lot of else in common, but could we cultivate that willingness? I'm willing to cultivate openness in my heart. So to let them be fully human is one of the ways that we do that. To acknowledge the complexity of their life, our relationship. Can I let them be in an open heart? Can I be connected with them?